Hello everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Melbourne AWS User Group podcast. Once again, we'll be talking about all the new things that have been released in the last month. And also, once again, I am joined by my good friends Jean-Manuel and Guy.
Hello.
Hello everyone, very happy to be here again, Arjen, thank you.
I'm very happy to have the two of you here again. So, without much else to say, shall we just get into it?
Sure.
Finally, in Sydney is always our starting point, and for a bit there I was afraid this was going to be a very short segment, but luckily we got a couple of announcements at the last moment. First one was just this morning that Amazon Code Guru, which we've discussed in the past, has both gone GA and is now available in Sydney.
Yeah, so that's exciting if you're a Java developer, but if you're not a Java developer, it's probably not very exciting.
But there's still a lot of Java developers out there.
There are, that's true, yep. So we shouldn't rain on their parade. And it looks pretty cool, I've got to say. I mean, it looks like it'd be quite a nice tool to have in your kit. It looks for like expensive. What line of code is the most expensive that you've got running in your environment? And I think it's probably a nice tool. Do either of you Java developers know how good it might be? Have either of you used it or know anyone who has?
I haven't used it yet, and so far as it wasn't available here, everybody has, as far as I know, mostly stayed away from it. So I do have some clients who might be interested in trying it out though.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, the good part is supporting repositories, so GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, Bitbucket Cloud, and AWS Code Commit. So not only a few, but most of the main use repository out there.
That's good.
Yep, and our friends across the pond will be happy that they've got the ability to have an outpost now.
For New Zealand, yeah. You still need to buy yourself, right? It's still a very expensive product, CapEx light. So it's like 250k, 300k to purchase, and then you can install that in your data center. So that would be great for low latency, for banks and all this type of environment in New Zealand. But they're still going to rely on the Sydney region, obviously, to set that up. And that appears as a kind of a false AZ inside your console, and you can start provisioning stuff from there. That's pretty cool.
I actually went and looked at the pricing because I was curious how much you'd actually have to pay for one of these. So it looks like the smallest unit you can get is a equivalent to a 4 M5 a 12 extra large with 2.7 terabytes of storage, and that's going to cost you $8K a month USD. So in New Zealand dollars, that's even worse than Australian dollars, I guess. And then you can go right up to a 10 R5D 24 extra large with 11 terabytes, and that's going to cost you a cool USD 48K a month.
Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that can make sense for people.
Yeah.
It's also good to see that Outpost isn't limited to just the countries that already have regions.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you seen any customers in Australia using it? I haven't have any even demand in my customer pool. Did you guys see any demand for Outpost?
I think it's the kind of product that everyone likes the idea of, but there's not that many people that you're going to encounter that have got the sort of cash to drop on something like that, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think if you're in New Zealand and you're in the AWS space and you had a significant enough investment in that environment already that you wanted to just have some low latency additional sort of AWS locally, I think, you'd be glad of that announcement. I did wonder whether in part it was a reaction to Microsoft claiming that they're going to set up an Azure region in New Zealand. I mean, we know, of course, that Azure regions aren't the same as AWS regions, right? So when they say they're going to create a region, it's probably one data center with one rack. But
so
they'll call it a region.
The same as Outpost then.
Yeah, basically, it'll be an outpost. Yeah, it'll be what AWS would have called an outpost.
Yeah.
Shall we have a look at the serverless news? There's a pretty big one in there.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. It's very, very, very controversial, and it was a topic for much conversation, wasn't it? The addition of the ability to mount EFS in Lambda.
Yeah.
What controversial about? I think it's pretty cool, but what controversial part do you think it is?
Well, I just know that people are lazy And while you couldn't do things like that in Lambda, it encouraged a certain kind of more microservice-y oriented behavior, I think, that people would have sort of stuck to.
Yeah.
I think as soon as you can mount an EFS volume, you're gonna get a whole bunch of people going, "Oh, cool, shared state. So I can store this stuff over here and just refer to it from all of my microservices can all refer to the same thing." So this whole idea that things are going to be broken up and kept isolated from one another, I think you're inviting developers to be very lazy and slip back into old habits. That's my concern.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a negative viewpoint on it, to be honest.
Totally is.
For a lot of cases, I think just the performance impact that it will have will be enough for developers to steer away from it. Because obviously this means you need to spin up your Lambda in a VPC, which luckily isn't as much of an issue with startup time as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it still is a bit slower than just having your Lambda run. And of course, we know that EFS, especially massively distributed, can have some performance quirks.
Yes. And in the doc, they say a few hundred milliseconds to attach an EFS endpoint to a Lambda. So you're losing kind of a bit of a time there in a cold start, right? Before attaching it. But, it's encrypted. It can run in VPCs and it's TLS as well. So even the collection of NFS is encrypted. So I think it's got a use case, and maybe it's the future of compute. No more EKS, no more containers. Run everything in Lambda with the EFS.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the use cases for it, and I know there are some use cases that people have identified. I just think that it's going to be one of those things that people need to use responsibly, and I suspect that you'll see a lot of bad patterns emerge where people haven't used it responsibly. That's all. It's with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. And to notice as well that you can have a Lambda function in one account and EFS into another account, as long as you have VPC peering between the two VPCs. So that's pretty cool, because you can isolate your data from your compute and having multiple Lambda accounts accessing the same storage. So I like that.
Yep. What else do we like from this? What about the API gateway sub-protocols?
That was a bit cryptic for me, this one. It's like you can connect sub-protocol with WebSocket API. Have you had experience with that? Because usually you connect the WebSocket and you suck out of it, right? What's the specificity of it?
Yeah, so this was something that I wasn't even aware existed, so that shows you how out of the loop I am. But so with this, so what happens is the client can say during the connection, I want to talk to you on this sub-protocol. And a sub-protocol is just something that's agreed between the server and the client. And essentially, the client says, please talk to me using your special chat protocol. And if the server has one of those and it's prepared to talk on that protocol, then it will agree and it can make the connection. So essentially, it's a way of kind of providing another layer of, I hesitate to use the word security because it's not really security, but it's another layer of complexity perhaps as to how WebSockets work.
All right, okay.
Essentially.
So the other things on this list, a couple of nice improvements to Amplify.
Yep.
So being able to deploy and host web apps from monorepos, which basically means, I assume, I haven't tried it out, but that you can have multiple websites running from the same repository. Yeah,
so basically it lets you point to a folder inside your repo and say that's that deployment and that other folder is a different deployment. So yeah, you can. Yeah. That's essentially how it's implemented from what I can see.
Is it to be able to share modules or other thing, kind of centralized type of artifacts?
Yeah, I think that's just for to deal with the case where you've got a single repo and you may have shared code that that the developers have decided it makes sense to have a single repo because there's shared code.
Yeah.
But there may be, say, multiple front ends, or maybe a back end and a front end in the one repo. So it's to deal with that scenario, to give you the flexibility to be able to deploy both parts through separate Amplify things. Yep. And the other nice Amplify announcement was the subdomains for branches, which is kind of cute. So you can make a branch and it'll automatically add a subdomain to your Amplify endpoint to allow you to view the consequences of your branch, or the commit that you've made to your branch. And then when you fold the branch or delete the branch, then that all goes away too. So that's kind of neat as a feature development sort of practice.
Yeah, it definitely makes testing things a lot easier, because it already had support for the custom subdomains, but now having it automatically get created and deleted is a lot easier than every time needing to update your configuration.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the Lambda support for Swift that was announced at the Apple conference. That's interesting. So Swift was developed in 2014 by Apple, and then the latest version is 5.2 that was released in March this year. And it has a small memory footprint and a quick start time, so that seems to be the perfect combine for Lambda, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely nice for developers who build iOS applications.
Yeah.
If they already use Swift, then they can stay in the same language, share some libraries, all the same things we just mentioned for monorepos.
Yeah.
Then there's the container side.
Containers.
Anything that either of you want to talk about, or is it just crickets?
EKS EKS can support Inf1 instances. It's really instances focused on AI and ML. You can run TensorFlow on it, PyTorch, MXNet. You need EKS 1.14 for that. You can't run it on the old version. And apparently, I haven't tested it, but you can get a 40% input in throughput to compare EC2 G4 running Inf1. But that comes with a certain price tag. A 96 CPU is $7 an hour, and a 6 extra large with 24 CPU is like a $2 an hour. So probably very cool for people who do learning models and stuff like that on EKS with Inf instance as node.
Yeah, the Inf instances were announced at reInvent last year. I believe this is still not available here in Sydney, so in that regard, we can't use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Amazon's custom-built inference chip. Yeah.
And something to add is you can have only self-managed node groups for EKS. You can't use the managed nodes. So you need to upgrade them yourself when EKS change version.
Always nice to see those special AWS things get expanded out into additional services. Like, I think the investment they've made in these sorts of technologies is really, it's one of the key differentiators they have. I guess one of the points of difference they have as a provider. And it's always good to see those things make it out into other services where they can be useful to more and more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I always just like seeing all the fancy new chips and just a little bit more than the more generic instance types that we are used to.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's cool.
AppMesh is available for Kubernetes now, is GA. That allow you to, it's a service inside your Kubernetes cluster to define routing and configure encryption, but just TLS encryption, not MTLS for the open banking people. And it allow to register your pods automatically with the Cloud Map service discovery as well, which is quite handy instead of having to do that inside Kubernetes. So some good improvement there, but not for everyone again. It doesn't support MTLS. What else do we have this month?
Just some minor things.
Yeah, the delete capacity provider for ECS. Do you know what exactly that is? Like, you had to delete the task, right, to delete the provider. Now you can just delete the provider. Is that the point?
I think that's all it is. Yeah, I did have a look at that because I was curious, and yeah, it seems to just be like an API thing. You can delete it directly instead of whatever you had to do before.
I think you had to delete the old task and then recreate it. That's why. Yeah.
Right.
And let's move on to the EC2 and VPC.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of routing and networking related items here, JM.
Is it? Oh, yeah, Direct Connect. Direct Connect enable failover testing. That's good. When we installing a Direct Connect for a customer, we had to test it from on-prem, so you had to shut down the port on the router and stuff like that. Now you can do it from the AWS side, and you have a console for that. So that's good. You can, terminate the BGP and then see if your failover works properly. And they give you a toolkit for that, then you can, and that record your testing for 365 days, so you can keep record of your testing. Not something to do every day in production, but yeah, it's a good improvement from Direct Connect. A lot of processors for you, Arjen. You said you love C5A and G6.
Yeah, I'm actually quite happy with the interesting chipsets that were announced. So last month we had the M6Gs, the first ones with the Graviton 2 ARM processors. And this month we have both the C6G and the R6G, which is really nice. Obviously, one compute optimized and the R is memory optimized. But yeah, it's good to see those announced. And then at the same time, as you said, the C5A, which is an AMD or second generation AMD EPYC processors, which is still, it seems weird to me to have both a 5th generation and 6th generation being announced at the same time.
Yes.
Even though they are so clearly different.
But the 5A is like 10% cheaper for the same performance. So that's pretty good. And you can go up to 96 CPU and 192 gig of memory. So that's pretty decent instance and running on 10% cheaper. So that's nice. And the 6, I had some data on the 6. You can provide 40% better price performance over 86 M5. And you have 8 size, 1 CPU, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 48. And up to 64 vCPU. But unfortunately, it's in Tokyo. That's the closest region, but not in Sydney yet.
Yeah, and just like the M6G also wasn't available. I think none of the processors we mentioned here are available yet in Sydney. Guess it's a bit harder to ship them over here at the moment.
And then for the 6, you can run all sorts of workload as well. I mean, not only Amazon Linux, but Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE, Fedora, all sorts of, Corretto for Java people. So you can run a lot of things in there, and that allow you to really kind of save money, and having better performance with cheaper PUs. So that's good.
Yeah, it's definitely good.
And then, yeah, there was the G4 as well, G4D bare metal instance, with 8 NVIDIA GPUs. That's massive.
G4DN even.
They're gonna have to revisit their naming at some point, aren't they? It's getting completely unruly. G4DN. I mean, I don't know. It's getting very complicated.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, it was hard enough for the exams to always remember what all the prefix letters stand for. Now you have to remember the suffixes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Crazy.
Another very cool in the networking, and I was very excited with that because that's a big problem for our customer, is to allow having prefix list in the VPC. So you can now create a prefix list. So all the IP address from your domain controller, for example, or for your on-prem range, you can put them into a list that can be shared in different security groups. So that will remove a lot of errors, I think, from customer just allowing 00 to the world to connect to their machine because they don't know the range of on-prem. And not only that, you can share them as well with RAM, the resource access manager, across accounts. So you can have that centralized prefix list for all your environment and share that to different accounts, and people can consume them in the security group. So I tested it. It's very quick. You can create a list and add a couple of IPs. They help you doing that range of IP if you need a slash 24/32 or something like that. That's pretty good. And that still count towards your security group limits. So in the security group, you can have 60 inbound and 60 outbound for IPv4, and the same for IPv6. If you have 60 of them into your prefix list, that will count. So you won't be able to expand your security group. But so you can have a mix and match. But I think that will really enhance the security, and that simplify as well the creation of security groups. Instead of having multiple lines for multiple IP, then you can have a prefix list instead. So that's good.
Yeah, that's definitely something that sounds very useful. I'm sure we've all dealt with situations where, let's just say, on-prem or VPN connection that needs to go through the outside for reasons, and this makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, or domain controllers, for example. You want to share the domain controller across accounts, across VPCs, through Transit Gateway, then you can have a prefix list with all your domain controllers in there, and your developers can consume that prefix list quite easily, and they don't have to think about it instead of having to remember which IP is what. So yeah, that's good.
Especially if you can then manage it from, say, a security account.
Yeah. So one limitation though, if you define 10 IP lists in that prefix list, you can't have more than 10. You need to destroy it and start it again. You can't add another one later. So that's interesting that you, at creation time, you define the number of IP you're going to have in there, and then that's it. You can't change it. So that for security reason, I guess that makes sense.
I know it's a wild question, but I don't suppose it has CloudFormation support yet?
Oh, I didn't check that. I'm sorry. I don't know the answer on this. I would say no, knowing by you in the product, but no, I don't know.
What about the instance refresh? We haven't mentioned that. That's kind of neat. That removes a problem that people had to sort of code around. So now you can just basically update your autoscaling group to use a new launch template or launch configuration with a different AMI in it, and then you can tell it to do basically a swap over of the old instances for new ones from the new AMI, and rather than having to kind of expand your group and then shrink it back down again and get all your old ones to be killed off by that process. And you can specify an instance warm-up time and a minimum healthy percentage when you do this, so they kind of override the warm-up time that you might have had configured for your old instances. So that gives you a way of basically saying, well, these new instances need a different warm-up time than the old one. And the minimum health percentage will basically say, so if you've got 10 instances, the default's 90% min healthy percentage. So if in that scenario, it will basically swap one, it'll kill off one instance and recreate it at a time, so that you've always got nine healthy instances in your pool. And obviously you can set that to whatever you want. So you can say 0% for min healthy instances, in which case it'll just go and blow them all away and replace them all. So that's kind of they've added some sort of neat functionality there, I think, to solving a problem that, is pretty widely managed in other kind of more clunky ways, which I think is a good thing. Especially
for EKS clusters and stuff like that, right? You will be able to be much more granular on the way you change your instances and pods. And that's generally available in all commercial regions. That's good. We got it.
Yep. And you mocked me for being slightly interested in .NET Core on Linux for Elastic Beanstalk, Arjen?
Yes.
But see, for me, I just see that anything that helps people get off Windows Server is a good thing. So I'm happy anything like that makes it easy. It like lowers the barriers to entry to getting people into AWS in a better way. That seems like a good thing to me. So I'm all for it.
It's hard to argue with that. So I'm not even going to try.
Good on you.
Shall we go for security items now?
Yep.
It's not as much there as last ones. Yeah, one that I quite like is that AWS Backup now also supports Aurora snapshots, where before there was a big gap. If you wanted to use AWS Backup as your central backup tool, you couldn't back up all of your databases if you were using Aurora instead of RDS. So it's good to see that included.
Yep, and the other announcement that relates to that too, of course, is the cross-account management and monitoring of AWS Backup.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice one, that you can now, from a central account, read your organization master account, that you can configure your backup configuration there instead of having to do it in each account separately.
Yeah,
that's nice. A big one as well for me is config support for 9 new managed rules. Some rules you had to, design your own rules before and own Lambda functions. So you can have now testing with AWS config if your SNS is encrypted, if you have security hub enabled, if you use S3 encryption with KMS, if you have RDS snapshot encrypted and EBS encryption by default as well. So a couple of new rules to simplify the life of people and then to make sure that the accounts are compliant. So always good to see. And then the next one for security was service catalog now support sharing portfolio across an organization from a dedicated member account. So that was a big problem for me when Control Tower suddenly decided to put, service catalog into the master account and billing account to be able to create then new accounts. So I think that's a preparation for Control Tower to fix that problem, because obviously in master account you shouldn't run anything, just billing, and having now a dedicated account. And it seems that they're doing that for a lot of services now. There was so service catalog now. There is as well
Guard Duty.
There is Firewall Manager as well.
Macy.
Yeah, all of that.
Systems Manager.
You can have dedicated account to have the proper separation of function between your account and having that to run independently from your master. So that's good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really strong model, and especially also for service catalog, where you're going to want to, I guess, come up with specific product portfolios that are relevant only to a subset of your people anyway. So you kind of want to be able to say that account over there has control over these products and this other account has control over those products, because otherwise, you're not really separating the concerns quite as well as you might.
Yeah. And I'll remind everyone, the master account cannot have service control policies. So this account basically is open to any change from a, administrator point of view. So it's much better to isolate everything out into child accounts where you can apply policies and OUs and all sort of control.
Yep. It's a good thing, TM.
AWS Shield Advanced now support proactive response events. So the team basically from Shield Advanced, which is an AWS team working in the background monitoring your environment for DDoS attack, can now proactively engage you as soon as there is some attack on Route 53 or on other of your IPs. So that's interesting.
That falls into the category for me of, wasn't it always like that? I thought that was the whole point of Shield Advanced, was that it was proactive. Did you have to actually ask them to go and deal with something? Like, I'm paying you $3,000 a month, but something happens. I have to ring you up and say, "Can you please deal with that?" Is that how it really worked?
As far as I understand, yes, now it's automated, and you have the DDoS response team now allocated to you automatically. Yeah.
Okay. Oh well, that's a good thing then. Yes. And the other thing that I know some people got excited about was the certificate manager automation of certificate issuance. So that was something that previously required some manual intervention. Now you can use CloudFormation to basically manage the whole process of creating the relevant CNAME records to do DNS-based authorization for your ACM certificate generation issuance.
But does that work for everything? Because you used to have to create a manual Route 53 record in there to be able to do the validation. Or is it working for domain validation or?
Yeah, it's for domain. It's for DNS-based validation. So the CNAME records. So you have to be using Route 53, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's not going to work. Obviously, it can't go and automatically create records in your Cloudflare or GoDaddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does require you to be using Route 53, but yeah, it'll automatically create those records as part of the process. So it automates that.
It could already do that for you through the console, so being able to do it through CloudFormation is definitely a good thing.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, you had to click the button, but yeah, to have CloudFormation click the button for you effectively sounds like a very good idea.
The transfer family enables source IP as a factor of authorization. I'm sure that some customer are going to love that. Transfer family obviously is SFTP and FTP. And then you can use source IP as a validation on top of the normal validation with a certificate or login. So that's good. That's another level of security there to authenticate for very old product.
Yep, it gives you extra validation on your unencrypted data transfers.
Yay.
But we had a couple of big announcements on the Dev and Ops side. First one that came out was Code Artifact, which is, as the name implies, an artifact repository for your code, similar to services like Artifactory, JFrog, Nexus. Probably as a developer who uses packages, you're familiar with one or two of them.
Yeah.
And now that's all built into your AWS console.
Yeah, it's neat because it'll do Maven packages, npm and Python, all in the one repository. So that's kind of neat, and it'll fetch and pre-cache, I guess, anything that you're using in your application that you need as a dependency. And the other nice thing about it is, I think it provides some sort of level of governance, I guess, where there's a sort of rather than sort of just calling out and going off to all the public repos and pulling stuff down, there's a central place that all of the dependencies can kind of be managed and I guess approved. So that's kind of neat, I think, too.
And you can encrypt it with KMS customer managed keys, which is really good for security, obviously. And for you, Arjen, CloudFormation support is coming soon. That's what the announcement says. So I'm not sure when, but soon. But guys, I mean, is it as good as Artifactory or still missing a lot of functionality as usual from the AWS point of view before the project matures and become, as good as an open source product?
There are still some features missing.
Okay.
I haven't dived into it too deeply, but from what I can see, it doesn't have everything that a organization might want in the artifact storage. But on the other hand, it seems like a pretty decent start.
Okay.
And if they keep building on it, then...
Yeah, because it's really a pain to build this, Artifactory product in the cloud or on-prem or move them or sync them. So that would be good to have the managed services for that. That's good.
Yeah. So the other new product announcement is Amazon Honeycode.
Oh, yeah.
So this is build your own Access sheets in the cloud. I was personally not very impressed by what I could see of the service, but I may have missed something.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those things where maybe if that's the kind of thing you need to do, you may well look at that and go, wow, that's great. I think the obvious kind of first gap that I noticed was it doesn't seem to be integrated with anything. So I kind of expected that it would be, there'd be some integration point with some other service that would be obvious. And it doesn't seem to really have any of those. Yeah, and I guess when I sort of heard the description of it, I thought, oh yeah, that sounds exciting, because I think low code, no code tooling is has a bright future. But yeah, I'd looked at it and thought, I don't know, it doesn't sort of speak to me. But maybe if your work a day life is full of spreadsheets and you're currently an Excel whiz that spends all their time sort of emailing new copies of spreadsheets off to people to get them to fill things in, maybe this is going to be a game changer for you. I don't know. Yeah,
I really feel like this is a service we need to see evolve.
Yeah.
And then it might turn into something more interesting. Because from what I can see, she said there's no native integration. You need to run something to push data in there. It doesn't just pull it, so the data gets stale.
Yeah. That which to me just seemed like, why does this even exist? If that's the way it's going to work, it doesn't. It like the lack of integration points just seemed very just a jarring kind of thing. But look, maybe it's just they throw it out there, get some feedback, and I mean this is the way AWS tends to work, isn't it? So just chuck something out there and get some feedback and see what people say about it, and then iterate perhaps.
Would you like to see RDS integration or DynamoDB integration? What do you think would make sense? Dynamo probably?
I was expecting at least one of those. Yeah, I was expecting something. Yeah, I mean, given that it's it could have been either, but yes, I figured that Dynamo would probably be where they'd start. But yeah, it doesn't even seem to be like there's a stub there that looks like it's about to be connected to anything.
But it supports mobile application, right? I mean, I'm a non-developer, right? Being infrastructure all my life, learned to code, to move to cloud probably 5-6 years ago. So I'm not a good developer. I'm slow. But for me, that's exciting. That's, I think, the future probably of non-code, like you said. Be able to deploy an application quite quickly for your company with a couple of clicks. When it will be more integrated with devices and database, I think that could be interesting.
Yeah. I think I was kind of thinking it was going to be something like a more of a flow-based programming tool. Like the way it's sort of oriented around the spreadsheet sort of concept as the heart of it. And to me, that just seemed like it was kind of making life making life harder than it perhaps needed to be. But then, as I say, look, it may be that the target market they have in mind for that is very comfortable with the idea of working in that spreadsheet model. It's just not. Doesn't speak to me particularly because I try and avoid spreadsheets as much as I can.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, the really big announcement, though, which I'm sure everyone's got an opinion on, is the emoji reactions to comments in code commit.
Thumbs up emoji?
Yeah, well, eggplant. Am I going too far?
Maybe a little.
Well, you can just give me the poop emoji on that one.
Another one is code pipeline support now, AWS app config as the new deploy action type. That's good. I mean, you can, continue your deployment after your environment is done and keep applying configuration instead of coding all the product like Ansible or other things. So I think app config has a good place there to configure application, and now integrated with code pipeline, so you can have end to end.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice announcement too.
And it is in Sydney as well.
Yeah, the other thing from this list that I'm personally interested in, and we've mentioned CloudFormation a couple of times, is the CloudFormation God project, which allows you to run compliance checks against your CloudFormation templates. I haven't played around with it enough yet, and the syntax seems a bit, interesting.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something I can see getting used in your CI/CD pipelines to, hey, do we not accidentally allow somebody to open up ports or
S3 star or something, silly that sometimes developers just do for testing and then ending up in production with, S3 bucket open to the world. But, it's funny because CFNAG has been around in the open source quite a long time, and that's a consulting firm in the US who did that. And even AWS is using it. If you look at a couple of the templates they've been releasing in Quick Start and stuff, they use CFNAG quite a lot. And now they develop a product on their own to do exactly the same thing, to monitor that compliance. So that's interesting. So maybe CFNAG was not powerful enough or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is either. So it can be a good thing that AWS comes out with its own version, or it can basically then stop all future development because everybody figures let's use the officially endorsed version.
Yeah, CFN Guard, I think this is very exciting. I mean, every security you can put in your pipeline before you deploy infrastructure is a good thing. So, and that's really a requirement even for banks, with APRA, with other. You need to prove that not only you have control in your environment, but then you keep this control permanent and every day. And so your release pipeline, you can prove that as well. So that's good.
Shall we have a look at the databases now?
Sounds good.
A pretty interesting one to me is the Aurora Global Databases read replica write forwarding. So I don't have a current use case for it, seeing most of the things I work with are just in the Sydney region, but I find it pretty nice that with your global databases that you can have write actions to those read replicas and they eventually end up in your master database.
Absolutely, that's nifty. And so you don't have to have different endpoints for reading and writing, and it just handles it under the covers for you. Yeah, and so you mentioned the eventually. So, and I think that it's got some options there around how that's handled as well. I'm just trying to remember. I've got a note here that's got session, global, or eventual before write. Yeah, so it is what you'd think. The eventual will do. So it basically lets you do your write and it returns, and the sync will be eventual to the secondary. With session, it's going to give you your current the session that you've made the write on will continue to it will give you read consistency of that write, and then global is the commit will happen on the secondary before it completes the write. So essentially the write won't be complete.
So, and don't forget it's across region, right? So you can have some serious millisecond there of latency.
That's right. So obviously the trade-off is the speed at which your action will complete, your write will complete. It's going to complete a lot quicker with eventual than with global.
Yeah. Another one I like, is in database, which is, is still storage, is the ability of FSX Windows File Server to grow storage and to scale as well the different and adjust throughput of your capacity. So FSX in the past, you had to create a big FSX, big storage, and then if you wanted to change that size or change the type of drive, you had to destroy it and start again. Now you can dynamically increase that storage, so you save a lot of money. And then for throughput capacity as well, you can change that for a couple of days if you wanted to have more throughput on your instance. So I've got customers in the education industry who work very cyclical time, and that will be very good for them. They will save a lot of money having that new capabilities to be able to scale just for the time of the exams and the tests, and then decrease that capacity but keeping the data longer term. So it's good.
Maybe let's just move on to AI/ML for your time to shine, Guy. The Decomposer's Chartbusters Challenge.
Decomposer. Yeah. Look, but I mean, the problem there is that I don't have a Decomposer, and if I did, I'd definitely be looking to top the charts there. So maybe you'll have to give me a primer sometime, Arjen, and let me borrow your Amazon branded keyboard.
This is your chance. There is a contest named Back to the Future with a Decomposer Chartbuster Challenge, and you can join between actually now 23rd of June to the 15th of July, and you can buy a keyboard for $79. And you have a 3-month free trial at the same time with Decomposer. That's your chance to join and do Sebastian Bach music.
What a terrible shame that I don't have $79. What a terrible, terrible shame.
Well, luckily, Guy, you can always just use the on-screen keyboard. I'm sure you'll love just clicking. It maps to your actual, typing keyboard.
Right. Okay, I'll bear that in mind. So is there anything here that I thought the Kendra integration with Lex was kind of nice? There's a search intent. So basically, previously you'd need to write some code to have Lex interact with Kendra, whereas now it's got a native search intent, so that you can write or you can query that Kendra interface using this search intent instead. So you basically, it's a piece of code you don't have to write to join those two things up. I've explained it really well.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly,
yeah,
what it means is that basically you can now very easily build something that you talk to it and it will find for you what you're looking for.
That's right. Yeah, which is easy. Everything should be easy. That's the world we want.
Definitely.
There is an announcement for Amazon Personalize as well. So I'll remind everyone that's machine learning technology that Amazon has been using for a long time, selling books. That's kind of personalized recommendation on your products, books, video, and stuff like that. So now you can, use filters and create your own filters to filter the personalized recommendation in your cart, and that allow to don't show again the product who have been already purchased, for example, or some other things. So I think that's a good implementation of filters, and then do good addition to the product Amazon Personalized, and that's available in Sydney as well.
Even better. That's the way we like it.
So, shall we do a roundup of all the other cool stuff?
Yes, let's see what I've got.
Let's start with the big or small new entry to the Snowball, or should it be called Snowstar family now?
Snow cone, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely picked an excellent name this time. AWS often doesn't have awesome names for things, and their naming schemes are very patchy. Like sometimes they'll really hit it out of the park, and other times you just go, "Oh my god, why did you call it that?" But snow cone, I think everyone immediately wants a snow cone just because of the name, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah. So can you remind us what the usage of snow stuff in AWS?
Snowstar.
Yeah, to transfer stuff, right? So it's a small device. It's like a A4 page fold in half. So it's not very big. It's like 25 centimeters by 15 by 8, 2 kilos, which is quite light. You can ship it around. It's 8 terabyte you can have 1 gig port, 10 gig port, some Wi-Fi on it, and you can power it with batteries. And apparently, you can even run it on the drone and to be able to film stuff or compute stuff with AI. So I think that's very good usage. I mean, I've got some customer in the energy sector who monitor the vegetation growth on the poles to kind of predict if vegetation need to be cut to don't damage electricity providers. So that could be a very good, 2 CPU, 4 gig memory stuff. We can, do AI, and having some enough storage to be able to do that on the fly on the drone. So I think that's pretty cool product. But only available in the US and Oregon.
Yeah, it strikes me as you need a pretty big drone to strap a 2 kilogram snow cone onto it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's not small. I'm sort of thinking maybe you might go Raspberry Pi first and leave the snow cone for some other application. But I guess it depends on your drone. Like if you've got some awesomely powerful drone that can do that,
like those Amazon delivery.
Oh yes.
You can transfer data to S3, EFS, or FSX as well, and there is a data sync product as well pre-installed in it. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and this is an edge. It's like it's a Snowball Edge. It's got you can run lambdas on it and such as well, I believe. So yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there is 2 CPU and 4 gig. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cute. And I think everybody wants one. So they probably don't come in yellow.
You can always just paint them yourself.
That's right. Yeah. What else have we got? Real-time anomaly detection in Elasticsearch. That looks like a pretty cool feature, I think. Basically, using machine learning to detect anomalies in your data that's going into your Elasticsearch cluster, which I think that's kind of a feature that I'm just trying to think whether Elastic themselves has that feature. Is that something where they're playing catch up?
I'm honestly not sure. I haven't paid too much attention to Elasticsearch lately.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of a nice feature.
And then Amazon SES can now send notification when delivery of email is delayed. Before it was just bounced. But now you can tell if the email is delayed, so that stop people retrying send the email again and again until the server on the other side is available again to receive email. That I think is good. And Amazon Route 53, I'm saying the networking stuff because I love that. Private hosted zone now have an API that you can query your VPC because, more and more people are sharing private zone between VPC, between multiple accounts, to simplify the DNS with, inbound resolver and outbound resolvers. So that will help a lot to query first the VPC, understand which private zone are there instead of doing it through the console or through manual CLI. So that's going to be interesting. That's a good help for automation.
Oh, you've got a note there about the high quality natural sounding text-to-speech voices, but there was an announcement too about a child voice. Did you see that one? That was kind of creepy.
I saw something about it. I didn't include it.
Yeah.
I can include it if you want to talk about it.
No, I was just going to say it sounds creepy. That's all. I just think of all the voices that we have and think, I'm just wondering what the use case for it is. I guess it's fair enough that maybe some use case you'd need, like if you want to read a story or something. I don't know. What would the use case of a child voice be?
For a kid service? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so like a kid's helpline or something. Maybe they want to speak to a kid. I don't know. It just seems a bit weird to me. You wouldn't necessarily want kids to think that they were talking to a real kid, whereas humans. So yes, kids are humans. Sorry, I've got 3 of them. I'm allowed to say things like that. Adults are, you can kind of expect them to discern when something's a computer voice or not. But I just wonder whether kids would be as good at figuring that out. Yeah, so I don't know what the use case for it is.
Okay, and that's all we have to say about the news for this month. So, Guy, JM, once again, thank you for discussing this with me.
Pleasure.
My pleasure.
And as always, I want to thank the user group sponsors, our gold sponsor Enabler, and our silver sponsors AC3, CMD, and now as well Do It International. And of course, thank you everybody for listening, and hopefully we'll see you again next month.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.